Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
What a save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Rui Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Ladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region! Seattle Sounders is campeón! It's gone! It's gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
Nice work on your little yacht thing.
And Portland can't say shit.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder at Heart wrote a commentary that we didn't take the Open Cup seriously.
This episode of Nos Arietes is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Arietes since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Welcome back to another episode of Nos Arietes on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. We are getting ready for the Club World Cup. It is coming up on Sunday. It's Thursday right now, so we still have a few days away. But to help me sort of give some of the big picture stuff that's been going on here is one of, honestly, I say this from the bottom of my heart, one of my favorite national soccer reporters out there. He does great work. Henry Bushnell from Yahoo Sports. Welcome to the show. I've been looking for an excuse to get you on here, and I finally found one this week. So I'm really excited about this.
I'm glad you did. I'm a big fan of your coverage of the Sounders, Jeremiah. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, this is I'm fascinated almost as much about this tournament for like the storylines that go beyond the games, because I do think these might be compelling games. I don't think it's going to be quite the spectacle that everyone hoped it would be, but there is no shortage of stuff going on around these games. And, you know, I thought you had a really good, like the reason I reached out to you is I read a story that I thought did a really good job of framing this tournament. And because I think it is a question that a lot of people are asking, which is essentially, why is this Club World Cup even happening? And your story does a good job, I think, of laying out some of the reasons, but rather than me recapping it, why don't you sort of tell us like the TLDR on why is this tournament even happening? Why did they decide to expand a 7-team tournament that no one really thought about into one that is, you know, essentially a club version of the World Cup, as the name implies?
Yeah. So it's complicated. I'll try to give the two on don't read. First of all, the prior Club World Cup, I don't even know what to call it now. The 7-team version.
Yeah.
Just wasn't very appealing to people. And it clearly wasn't that successful. And there would be maybe one, you know, the final would be the one relevant game that kind of globally people cared about, and the European team almost always won it. The point of this expanded Club World Cup is to basically, it's to make the club game more global. And then we have to unpack what exactly that means. Does that mean that we want to give a chance to clubs from the Americas and Asia and Africa, a chance for them to compete with the European teams, and a bigger stage to compete on? That is certainly part of it, or you could argue that is part of it. The other part of it is that FIFA wants more money going to the global game, and to get more money to the global game, FIFA has to make more money, and the way to make more money is to organize more games. And currently, most/all of the big club games are organized by European entities, and the essentially what this is going to do, the vision for this, for this expanded Club World Cup is to not necessarily replace the Champions League, but just cut into the Champions League's monopoly on those big club games and take some of that money, or get some of the same type of money that is going to UEFA via the Champions League back to the clubs and back to European soccer, and get some of that money to global soccer entities, whether it's clubs, whether it's federations via the payments that FIFA makes to them annually, et cetera.
Yeah, I think you actually did a pretty good job of summing up what like a 1,500 word story into about a minute. So congratulations on that. I think you did a good job there of managing a pretty complicated story. And as you said, I think you did a good job of illustrating in your story is that it is about money, but what that money is supposed to represent can kind of be viewed differently. On one hand, it undeniably is this is a play to enrich FIFA, but what FIFA does with that money is very important. And FIFA does do a lot of stuff to put money back into the world game. And a lot of the money goes to places that we don't necessarily think of. Even in this tournament, I believe they're giving $1 million to each local community to help sort of like grassroots soccer. And yet there is also this undeniable element of just making a big spectacle for the purposes of making a big spectacle. And that's sort of what I think most people have focused on. And I think rightly so. Like this tournament, they're offering $1 billion prize pool. The winner's going to likely walk away with something like $125 million, assuming it's a European team. And that puts it on par with the European Champions League in terms of how much money is out there. And yet that alone does not seem like it's built the buzz that is going on here. But reading your story, I also felt that FIFA looks at this not necessarily like 2025 was not a make or break year for this tournament in their mind. This is part of a much longer play. Is that fair to say?
It's a startup, and startups don't make money right away, right? Like
Right.
it's going to take some time. And as much as FIFA, so one of the things that bugs people is that FIFA won't come out and just like talk openly about that. And they're talking already as this is like new era of global football. This is the biggest thing ever.
It's going to make $3 billion of profit.
Yeah. Whereas clearly we all sense that that's not the case, and there's not that much interest in tickets right away. And broadcasters were very clearly lukewarm at best, and sponsors as well. So that's kind of the weird aspect of this tournament. But yes, like they don't necessarily they're probably not going to make much money or any money at all on this first tournament. I think the hope is that it is good enough that it sets the groundwork for 2029 and 2033. There's also rumors that they could even try to make it a biennial tournament rather than once every 4 years, once every 2. Because, and one of the reasons for that is, so one of the reasons they're not going to make money is because they've had to pay all these clubs a lot of prize money to get them to participate at all.
Right.
But now all the clubs see this prize money. And so like, Liverpool sees Manchester City getting potentially $80 million or whatever. And all these clubs actually do, I think, want to be a part of it now. It would be because of the money on offer. So that's both why it's not going to be a huge moneymaker for FIFA right away, and also why it has, potential for the future, because these clubs do want to be involved. And I think, we'll see how the players take it, but, at board level, like I think the clubs do care about this.
Oh yeah. I mean, you would think so. I mean, this is this is a lot of money for every single team that's playing it. Now, is it as big of a deal for some of the bigger clubs? I don't know, maybe not. But the fact that even that every European team, or not every year, every big European team is getting $40 million just to show up is a huge chunk of money. There's no sporting organization in the world where $40 million is an irrelevant amount of money. We're seeing this in MLS where, each team is guaranteed $9.55 million. And that represents anywhere from, that's like 20% of their annual revenue for a lot of these teams. or 10 to 20% of their annual revenue. Like that's a huge, there's no other single source of income that will be bigger, I would think, than on a per game basis than the 3 games that the Sounders will play in this thing. And I would think from a Oregon, like you said, like a board level, it's undeniably attractive to want to be a part of this. And I suppose there could be an attraction to make it even more frequent than it is now. And yet again, we can't really get around the fact that at every step of the way, the interest in this from the sporting public has been at best lukewarm. You know, when they first announced this in 2023, at least, and correct me if I'm being unfair with my timeline, but 2023 is when they first announced this is happening. It's going to be in the United States. We're all in on this thing. I think they even announced they announced all the venues at that point. And from jump, the biggest story was how no one wanted to pay to broadcast this thing. Like I think they were seeking $1 billion media deal, basically with the idea that was going to pay for the prize pool. And then, Apple was supposedly going to want it. Apple didn't want it. And then they just presumably went down the list and nobody wanted it until they end up with DAZN, which is I think only the most soccer sickos of soccer sickos even know what DAZN is in the United States. And to their credit, they're going to be putting it on for free. I'd like to think that it will work just fine, but it's going to have very little TV presence here. I guess there's going to be 20 games or so on TNT, but otherwise, and then there's going to be a bunch of games in Spanish as well on the Univision channels. But and then it went from there to the players might not even want to participate in this thing because of and it just felt like for the first 18 months after the announcement, it was almost all negative. Like almost all the earned media was negative.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we have to clarify that this is a very Western Eurocentric view, right? And for a lot of the non-European, non-North American clubs, fans, etc., that are involved in this, it's certainly not beloved everywhere, but there's a bit more of a more eager reception towards this.
I think you're right.
But yes, and it's interesting to think about how much was all that resistance and lukewarmness because people actually don't want this and actually aren't interested in it, and how much of it was driven by some of the economic factors at play at a high level where the Premier League is resisting this and La Liga is resisting it, and UEFA was resisting this. And they have such a grip on the media in a way in their respective countries and on fans that if a fan sees the Premier League not wanting this, then are they just going to automatically assume that, this is a BS tournament that shouldn't exist at all? So I don't know how much of that is a part of it.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been very, it's been, I think where I come out on it and where I think a lot of kind of independent, rational people come out on it is as a concept, it is good. We should have, it is great that the Sounders and other MLS teams and teams from Mexico and Argentina, et cetera,
and Japan and Korea and Saudi Arabia and Egypt.
And not just to play against the European teams, to play against each other. I'm super looking forward to the Sounders opener. That's it. It'll be fascinating to see how all these teams compare. It's just the way that that FIFA has gone about launching it, and the initial ticket prices and all this. I think just has rubbed people the wrong way and contributed to that. It contributed to and confirmed that initial anti-Club World Cup reaction that people had to it.
So you bring up the ticket prices, and I don't know how much insight you have into this, but I know when I first heard of this thing, I sort of assumed, okay, this is going back to the startup kind of idea that this is a proof of concept, that FIFA is going to want to come out of this, and whether or not they make money is not really what's important. The important thing is laying a groundwork and showing people what an amazing tournament they can put, what an amazing thing this can be. Pack the stadiums. That's why you put it in the United States, where you already have all the infrastructure you need. You're going to have built-in fan bases for almost everybody. It's theoretically like an easy country to get into. Or there's flight everywhere flies into the United States. So you can, you have all these things working for in its favor seemingly. And then the prices come out and it's like, oh no, they're pricing these like the Super Bowl. These, you couldn't get into, most of the Sounders games for less than $100. And then on top of that, they had this really wild structure where they sold the worst tickets first. And so you could only buy tickets in the worst sections of the stadium instead of letting people choose wherever they wanted to sit. Have you heard much from anyone about the way this was priced and sort of the I don't know what the way to the momentum, the sort of negative momentum that sort of fed into.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, frankly, it was stupid. Like they way overestimated how much interest there would be. And as you said, like there's really no way to recover. Obviously they have eventually lowered prices, and
they're literally giving tickets away in Seattle.
Yes, they're giving all sorts of, they're offering all sorts of deals.
Right.
But there's no way to recover from that early, like we way overpriced it. Obviously the reason they did that was because they had to make a lot of money on this tournament to meet the prize money asks that these European clubs are making. And obviously the big reason they are going to be able to give that prize money is this DAZN deal that is
right.
seemingly largely funded by Saudi Arabia.
Although what's funny is it's like that's all. What's just to digress on that? What's funny is like if you look that up, like the AI answer that you get from Google is it's not a third party that put up the money.
Right, because that's what they were saying at the time. But it's right. That's clearly part of it. But anyway, right. They had to make a lot. They had to make. Look, so they came in with huge expectations for how much money they could make on this.
Yes,
they lowered those expectations, but they still have to meet those lowered expectations to pay the clubs and the various other operational things that they have to do. So that's why they, I think, initially that and just overconfidence was why the high ticket prices initially. And as you said, like, yes, it's not just that they priced them so high; it's the ones that they sold, so that they were stuck with. People are getting moved from the upper decks to other sections, and my understanding is that at least multiple stadiums, upper decks are going to be closed for some games. Which is just I mean, it's they're certainly not the first soccer organization in the United States to overprice tickets, and you would think that a good strategy would have been just to sell them at lower prices, have full stadiums. But I think, there was resistance to the idea of, look, most startups are willing to lose money initially. There was big resistance to FIFA, like dipping into its reserves to fund this tournament for understandable reasons, I think. So they had to make a certain amount of money on it. And I think that's why you see all this. That's why you see all these conversations about money related to the tournament.
Yeah. I guess what this all leads to is, we're almost exactly 1 year out from the start of the 2026 Men's World Cup. And, we saw a lot of coverage of this yesterday, and you had some more great coverage, frankly, of sort of some of the things that are going on around this. But I think there's this growing sense that FIFA, and maybe more than FIFA, the World Soccer Organization, the world of international soccer seems to view the United States sort of as an ATM for their friendlies, for their tournaments. We see La Liga talking about wanting to have competitive games here. You can kind of go down the list. There's many examples of how the United States is sort of just seen as this cash register for all these teams. And I'm sure on some level FIFA was expecting that too. The 1994 World Cup was, famously the most profitable World Cup in history at the time, and they played to these huge crowds, and I think it might still actually be the highest average attendance, if not the highest total attendance at a World Cup. And I think there was sort of this assumption that this Club World Cup would be kind of like a club version of the 94 tournament, which it obviously isn't. But here, I do wonder, what impact do you think this has on 2026? Like, are these seen as completely independent tournaments that there's nothing to be taken away from, or is this opening some eyes, you think, in Switzerland about, okay, maybe we have to rethink our approach going into the World Cup? Because if this happens, like, it would be an absolute nightmare for empty stadiums to be at an American World Cup, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's leading to any big rethinks. I think personally, just the sense that I get is that I do think some people involved have been a bit surprised by the relative lack of buzz about the 2026 World Cup at this stage. And I do think that there's a chance that it's not the huge party, everybody interested in it, taking over, daily news cycle, taking over everything. It's not that as big as a lot of people involved thought or assumed it would be, but it's still big. Like, most of the stadiums are going to be. I can't imagine that. I don't think every stadium, every single seat will be sold, but I think the vast majority will be, and the prices are gonna be high. Like, there's no right. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly how high. But
I mean, we're seeing like $20,000 ticket packages and all kinds. Like, we're seeing. I mean, the stuff that's been out now. I mean, they're doing all these things with NFTs, which I didn't even realize were still a thing.
Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Arietes, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening.
Nos Arietes, admittedly, is not exactly known for our spicy takes, but that doesn't mean we want our food to be mild. Spice up your life with Haxon Ferments. Handcrafted in Georgetown and made with the best local ingredients from across the Pacific Northwest, they specialize in unique small batch fermented hot sauces and vinegars. Haxon Ferments brings bold flavors and natural fermentation together for something truly special. Whether you're a heat seeker or just looking to elevate your cooking, you'll find something you love at haxonferments.com. That's HAXANFERMENTS.com. And right now, if you use the code SOUNDERATHEART, that's all one word, at checkout, you will get a free hot sauce with your order. Again, go to haxonferments.com, use the code SOUNDERATHEART at checkout for a free hot sauce with your order. Haxon Ferments is a proud sponsor of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network. Sounder at Heart's Club World Cup coverage is being sponsored by realtor Marnie O'Shan. Yes, that's my sister. With 20 plus years in marketing, business, and negotiation, and an MBA from UW, Marnie O'Shan helps homebuyers and investors make smart, informed real estate decisions. From first homes to 1031 exchanges and developmental deals, she offers expert guidance backed by financial insight and local market knowledge. Expertise in new construction and well-versed on all types of real estate, she'd like to talk to you about your goals and is here to help you move forward with confidence. While I'm obviously not an impartial observer, I can tell you that I have referred both friends and family to Marnie, and she's helped them get what they were looking for at prices they wanted to pay. You can reach her at marnieoshanhomes.com. That's MarnieOshanHomes.com, or email her at marnie@windermere.com. I mean, it's like they clearly there's going to be a lot of money here, but I guess, and I suppose the pricing is not what I'm wondering about. But you pointed out that we're a year away, and I got an email from someone at FIFA, and they're like, "I'm sure you're aware of this, and I'm sure you're covering it about the World Cup being a year away." And I'm like, man, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't even on my radar, let alone like something I'm planning on doing something big for. And it is funny because there's just not, like, we have the World Cup coming here in Seattle in a year, and the local media is covering this in a way that they would cover virtually any sporting event, not like the biggest sporting event in the world is coming here. And I feel like that's probably and this is a pretty soccer savvy, community. And I don't get the sense that the and it doesn't help that the U.S. national team is in a total shit show right now.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think that's probably part of it. The broader thing, I think, is that it's just about the U.S. market and the U.S. as a country. There's just so much going on here, both in a bad sense, like in a political, just news cycle, politics, the daily news cycle, and also in a just there's so many entertainment options. There's so many things for people to do, ways in which they can spend their day. Just like we live in the most privileged country in the world in that sense. That people don't come around to getting excited about things like that until until closer to the event. And I think that's what FIFA and a lot of the people involved in the organization of it are probably correctly banking on. That yes, there maybe not be the buzz that everybody expected right now, but come March of 2026, we'll start to feel that. But I also do think that it's not going to totally consume people the way it would in other countries. I think you'll see a lot of people get interested in it, but maybe for a lot of people, it will be in more so of a casual sense. And unfortunately, because of the ticket prices, I think that could be a decent portion of the demographic at games too. It's just the people who can afford to pay will pay a lot after they have, not really cared about the World Cup until a month before it. And we'll see. We'll see how that impacts the atmospheres at games. But I mean, there are a lot of variables here about just what the vibe will be like. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, it is funny. 3 years ago, I was on a Vox explainer talking about the World Cup, and they asked me what's one thing that you think is maybe not being covered as thoroughly as it should be. And I think that at the time, and the thing I said is, I don't think people are really appreciating how big of a deal the 2026 World Cup is going to be. And at the time I felt like, man, I don't even know if I believe how big of a deal it's going to be. And I'm sitting here now a year going, man, I think I was maybe overselling that. Because it's interesting how this is going. I just don't know. I mean, it could end up being a huge deal. It's just the degree to which the buzz feels like it's just been really tamped down by, like you said, a lot of things. It's not necessarily stuff that's all in FIFA's control or even the U.S. national team's control, but you start adding it all up together. And, one of the things that you highlighted in a story I think you just published today is the security concerns around this tournament. And I think sometimes it's easy to disregard that specifically because we don't really think about the way that American sporting events, that's just become part of life. But yet the Copa America Centenario was this eye-opening thing that just because you have American facilities doesn't mean everything's going to go smoothly. Just because it's in the United States, everything's going to go smoothly. And that seemed to be the tone of your story, which was the Copa America Centenario really did open some eyes about how this is not just another sporting event. This is not like having an AFC championship game.
Yeah. And just because you're talking about the one last year, right? The 2024 Copa?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not Centenario. Yeah. Sorry. I called it the Centenario because it was in the United States, but that was obviously a long time ago. Right. I am sorry. Yes,
no, this I'm was talking just about last year's Copa America that they decided to bring the United States.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, you're right. The last year's Copa America. Sorry.
Yeah. No, exactly. But yes, I think it did open people's eyes, and I heard from a few people that like they're almost look. What happened in Miami last summer was in no way a good thing, but they avoided the worst outcome, which would have been people dying, and it's almost good that it happened then, so that people are alive to the possibility that it could happen this summer or next summer. And people are more on alert and prepared. Now, obviously, there could be a downside of that, but there's even more extensive security. And I think, one of the things that people talked to me about was just the worry of over policing to the point that it becomes not even fun anymore.
Right.
And it's almost like you're going to a World Cup in a police state. We certainly don't want that. But I think, yes, like I think it really alarmed people to a necessary degree that they will all be on alert. And maybe they'll go a bit over the top this summer, especially because there won't be that many. The crowds won't be as big as they will be next summer. But I think my sense is that they're all pretty confident that, look, securing any event is a huge, complicated challenge, but I think there are enough competent people involved that they're confident that it will go okay.
And I guess that one of the things that I found fascinating going to pick up my credentials yesterday from Lumen Field is that they've created this whole different security barrier that wouldn't normally be there. They're going to have turnstiles, which is something that they don't normally have at games. And is that something that they're just now implementing for this World Cup, or do you know if this has been sort of like the standard way that they do things, where they have this extended security, what do they call it? Security
perimeter. Yeah.
Perimeter, as well, and then so there's all this fencing up everywhere that hasn't ever been there before.
Yeah, this is the international standard in a lot of ways. Now it varies stadium to stadium, country to country on the specifics, but this is what I went to games in Argentina a couple years ago, and you get your ticket checked by somebody several blocks away from the stadium, and then a few blocks later there's another check where you're actually going through gates, and you might even have to show an ID. And then that's just to get to then a few blocks later to the actual entrance to the stadium.
Right. So this is multiple security checkpoints, basically.
Yes. This is what happens. This, if you I was in Qatar for the World Cup. There's very far away from the stadium, there's an initial check where you put your bag through. In my case, you show your credential. For a fan, obviously you show your ticket. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one closer to the stadium. So yes, it's certainly different. I think I don't know exactly what it's like for NFL games these days. There generally are like at least 2 checkpoints, but they're usually pretty close together. For international soccer, and especially even more so next summer, it will be very far. Like a very big area around the stadium will be enclosed and shut off, and there will be all these different parts of the process to get in.
So like a FIFA zone, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I don't know what their exact term for it is, but yeah, there's outer perimeter and inner perimeter. And even I think for 2026, they're talking about secondary perimeters and tertiary perimeters, especially for some of the bigger games. And inside that zone it's both for security. It's also that inside that zone is where you'll have some sort of musical performance before the game, and the hospitality tent and the media center and all these different things that usually for an NFL or MLS game are just inside the stadium, and you don't need all this outside. Right. But so there's so many different aspects of it, and things they need to build out that aren't built into the stadium.
And so in this reporting, did you obviously I assume the reporting happened before, a lot of what's going on right now in real time with, the ICE stuff, I guess it was yesterday, or maybe it was 2 days ago. There was Border Patrol basically put out this tweet saying we're going to be suited and booted for the Miami game. And apparently there's some expectation that there's going to be an ICE presence at at many stadiums, if not all the stadiums. Did you get any hint of that during the reporting of your story?
Mostly no. What I would say is, and I think CBP has come out and clarified this today or yesterday, that like it's not uncommon for them to have some like very secondary role in securing major events. Like they and maybe even I'm a bit unclear on the ice side, but I think that the sense I get is that there's a chance that this fear is a bit overblown, and a lot of different federal agencies have, especially for an event like next summer for the big World Cup, a lot of different federal agencies, mostly within the Department of Homeland Security, have roles in this, and there's this super complicated web of command that and it filters down to local, state, county level police departments, etc. There's just a lot of different entities involved. That said, like if ICE was gonna be at these games and trying to detain people, they wouldn't come out and say it. So obviously,
fair enough.
Like the fear is, given what's happening in the country right now, the fear is totally understandable. And it's an inescapable backdrop to these tournaments, both the Club World Cup and the Gold Cup, that are about to start. They're international events, and they attract a lot of people who are from the United States, who live in the United States but are from elsewhere, with varying all sorts of different backgrounds and stories. But they love soccer, and we all love to think that soccer is this game that brings everybody together. But the political backdrop in the United States right now is not super amenable to just have to be a big celebration where nobody's thinking about this.
Yeah, and I guess along those lines, Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, spent a lot of political capital sort of buttering up President Trump and sort of like trying to, to be generous with his effort was to make sure that these tournaments went off as smoothly as possible, and understanding that whether or not he supports him politically, he needs him to be on his side to just make sure these events go off. And it seems like for all of his efforts, we're still getting these stories about, fans aren't going to be fans from certain countries, are being told, no, you're not going to be able to get in. There's all these delays with getting visas. Your story I believe it was your story that talked about how the wait to get visas for a lot of these countries is very long and probably won't get cleared in time at its current pace. I guess, how big of a concern, like what is the sense that you're getting about that aspect of it, just from a pure tourism perspective?
I think it's a big unknown. And I think you laid it out pretty well, that Gianni Infantino and Donald Trump have done, they have built a close relationship, an alliance. They are going to give each other various things over the next year and already have. And the question is, for example, like Gianni Infantino is going to give Trump probably whatever visible role he wants at the 2026 World Cup. He will be in the spotlight as much as he wants. The question in all this is like, what is Gianni Infantino getting in return? Is he just getting personal, publicity and dinners with all these high up heads of state and things like that? Or is he actually getting a lot of key things for FIFA and for these tournaments? And then also, like, within that, to what extent could he actually go to Trump and say, hey, we need to let more fans into this country to be able to watch the World Cup? I kind of doubt that that's going to happen too much. But on the topic we were just talking about, could he go to Trump and say, hey, can we not have ICE or CBP at these games?
Right.
And is that legitimate? Could Gianni Infantino actually affect how the Trump administration enforces immigration? Or could he just convince them to try to make it more quiet and convince CBP to delete this tweet or whatever?
Right.
And so like how real is the pull that Infantino has, and what can he get out of the relationship? I think is going to be just a fascinating dynamic over the next 13 months.
Yeah, well, it's going to be very exciting and very interesting here. It's going to be fascinating to see what we are able to learn from this tournament itself. Henry, I really do look forward to reading your coverage of this, because I would urge everyone, if you aren't a reader of Henry's, I would urge you to follow him on social, to read his work, because he is really doing some first-class coverage of the entire soccer scene, and especially when it comes to international soccer. He's got another great piece that we didn't get into about the sort of the place that the U.S. national team is in right now, which is seemingly a pretty dark place right now. You've got Christian Pulisic doing a media tour where he's basically saying, I don't be mad at me for not playing games. But in any case, Henry, where can people follow you? What's the best way that they can kind of keep up on your work?
Yeah, I'm at Henry Bushnell on X, I guess we're calling it now, and I'm not super active there. I'm more active on Blue Sky. You can probably find me by searching my name, and also my author page at Yahoo Sports is always a trustworthy place.
Awesome. Well, Henry, thank you for doing this. Thank you for your time, and looking forward to reading more of your good work.
Thanks, Jeremiah. I appreciate it.
All right, you're listening to Nos Arietes, part of the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, and we will catch you next time.
I expect a LAFC who's motivated to prove themselves at home, to prove to their fans that they're capable of winning in this league. And it's up to us to really brew in the party.
I feel a lot better than Bob.